I'm excited about the remaining 90-plus days before this caucus. We're going to continue to work our tails off to make sure that it is indeed the most successful and accessible caucus in history. And Iowans are again going to send a message and set the tone for the nation of how we build our party and how we build and retake our democracy. We've got a little over a year till the general election, and every single day we're going to be out there talking about those values of opportunity that are indeed the values of the Democratic Party. So I'm happy to take any questions that you have.
There's a question I have about Speaker Pelosi. She said today at Bloomberg that I'm not a big fan of Medicare for all. I mean, I welcome the debate. I think that we should have health care for all. I think the Affordable Care benefit is better than Medicare benefit. If the Speaker of the House is not for Medicare for all, should the other Democratic candidates that are going to be appearing here still speak in favor of Medicare for all?
Well, that's why we have a Democratic primary, is to have discussions about really important issues. And what Speaker Pelosi has also pointed out, and what I point out with regularity, is let's level set where we are. Thanks to Democrats, starting with Lyndon Baines Johnson with Medicare and Medicaid, and then Barack Obama with the Affordable Care Act, we are substantially up the mountaintop of ensuring access to quality health care for everyone. Thanks to Democrats, we're 85–90% up the mountaintop. Every single Democrat believes that if you have a pre-existing condition, you should be able to keep your health care coverage. Every single Democrat believes that we should lower the cost of prescription drugs. Every single Democrat wants to get to the mountaintop of universal health care. There are differences of opinion among our candidates. That's undeniable. And the good news is that that's why we have caucuses here in Iowa. That's why we have primaries elsewhere, because then the voters can ask the question. If health care is my #1 issue, and that is the #1 issue across America for so many people, then what plan would work best for me and my family and my community? And that will be up to the voters to decide. And I'm confident that as a result of the debates we've had, that people have a better understanding of where the candidates stay, where they stand on these issues. That's what debates are about. That's what voting is about. And the good news is that every single Democrat running for president is striving to get to that mountaintop. And this president has made clear, I want to go to the bottom of the mountain again. And I don't think anyone in America can afford that.
There's one candidates and some people in Iowa that have expressed concern that the qualifying for the debates has become so important that it's in some ways encroaching on or displacing Iowa's role as a winnower of the field. Has the DNC created a monster that's kind of overstepped its bounds?
I understand the concern. I would respectfully disagree with it. Our first, what we've been able to do through a very transparent process is to ensure that everybody had a level playing field. Let's review the last year. Early last year, we set forth the threshold for participation. Wow, that's impressive. Early last year, we set forth the thresholds. We announced that we would have 12 debates. We announced that our first debate would be in June. We established not one, but 2 different manners of getting to the debate stage. One was a polling threshold, 1%. It's, with all due respect, a little hard to get any less than 1%. 1% or 65,000 unique donors. That meant that if you got 65,000 donors to give you $1, that would be enough. And as a result of that, the grassroots threshold, we have had unprecedented participation. If you talk to people at Act Blue, which is that's the fundraising small dollar donor portal for the Democratic ecosystem, they have had more new donors in 2019 than in 2017 and 2018 combined. And I talk to voters all over this country who say, I watched my candidate on the debate stage, I'd given her $1, I gave him $10, I felt like I had skin in the game. So what I would say our process has done is to make sure that everybody got a fair shake. You will notice that we worked with all the networks to ensure that people, every candidate, not just the folks who were polling high in January and February, had opportunities for earned media. So people had CNN town halls, everyone, not simply the perceived front runners, but everyone. We gave more free media opportunities than ever before. And then we did what you must always do. The closer you get to the primaries, you raise the threshold, because you gotta demonstrate progress. I would hardly submit that going from 1% to 2% is unfair. In 4% in December, no candidate in the history of the Democratic primary who was under 4% in December has ever won the Democratic primary. So we're looking at history, and we're erring on the side of inclusion, and that's why we still have a very, very large field, and I welcome that.
Tom, speaking of inclusion, some Democrats have said that the partnership with NGP Van and some other canvas mobilization tools that was under your predecessor, Howard Dean, quite a few years ago, that it stifles competition, that sometimes state parties and the DNC restrict data access for candidates. How do you make sure that there is accessibility while also having a database contract with something like NGP Van that continues to kind of silo it into one technology portal?
Well, we've actually worked with a number of different data and technology stakeholders to ensure that we have the best and most accessible and rich data files. And so we'll continue to work with NGP Van, but we're also working with others. A big part of what we do at the DNC is we build infrastructure for all the candidates. 6,000 candidates used our voter file last year in 2018 when running for school board, Senate, and everywhere in between. And we're going to continue to work with NGP Van. We're going to continue to work to make sure that people who are running for school board or people who are running for Senate have the ability to run a good campaign. And state parties have considerable autonomy because different states have different situations on the ground, so we're not dictating a one-size-fits-all approach.
Tom, one
Chairman.
more question.
Yes, sir, we gotta go right here. This guy, how are you?
Good, thank you for your time. So in states that Trump won in 2016, how do you plan on mobilizing with those who voted for the president or Republicans or that are now on the fence on who to vote for? How do you plan on mobilizing in those states?
Awesome question. You know what? We started from day one. I'm a big believer that in order to succeed, we have to be in every state, every zip code party. Our partnership with our state party partners is called Every Zip Code Counts. Why is it called Every Zip Code Counts? Because every zip code does count. We've increased our investment in our state parties by a third. After I got here, we've augmented that with multi-million-dollar investments that have enabled us to talk to people everywhere. And let me give you 3 examples of our success in 2018. Statewide, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. All the statewide races in those states, the Democratic candidate won. Why did I pick those 3 states? Because those were 3 states Donald Trump won in 2016, and those are 3 states we won in 2018, and those are 3 states that we're going to win again in 2020. Why? And this gets to another part of your question. Because not only are we organizing everywhere in those states and elsewhere, but we're also listening. I think politics is personal, and what you have to do is listen to voters. We did well in Wisconsin in the governor's race, not only in Madison and Milwaukee, but actually roughly 3/4 of the voter edge we got between 2014 and 2018 was in the suburban, exurban, and rural parts of the state of Wisconsin because we were organizing everywhere. We're doing the same thing here in Iowa. We invested a lot in Iowa in 2018, and I'm proud of the fact that we now have 3 out of the 4 congressional seats. We were proud to invest in Fred Hubbell's campaign. Didn't quite make it to the mountaintop, but you can bet your bottom dollar that we're going to be investing in every single congressional district. And the reason we are in Milwaukee for our convention is I firmly believe that we have multiple pathways to 270. And one of the most important pathways is through the industrial Midwest. And that's why we're going to be competing not only in Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, but in Iowa, and Minnesota, Illinois, Ohio. We have that industrial Midwest fortified. We will again win the presidency.
Tom, what topics would you like to hear more on the debate stage?
Well, we've had a lot of discussion about a lot of topics, and I'm really excited that we've been able to talk about healthcare. I'm excited that we've been able to talk about climate change. I mean, when I go to places like Wisconsin and Iowa, climate change is, I was just in Ohio talking to farmers there, and one of the biggest challenges they've had this year was that they had a really, really rainy season early in the year. And so they had planted, and so they lost that, followed by a drought. And you talk to folks in Iowa, Nebraska, and elsewhere, climate change isn't simply the West Coast and the East Coast. You know it here. And when you've got a president who doesn't believe the science, you're telling farmers here in Iowa that you're going to continue to have to deal with these issues. And so in these debates, we've been dealing with a wide range of issues because you know what? The president has to be the multitasker in chief. And that's why we're going to continue to talk about the economy. We're going to have to talk about foreign policy because our democracy is at risk. And we have a president who believes, I think that, I was taught that Canada is our friend and Russia is not. This is a president who appears to believe the opposite. He contacted Putin before he contacted people here in the most recent action in the Middle East region. That's scary. And so we're going to see in the debates the discussion of the wide range of issues that are front and center for the American people.
What was the most important thing that you think Congressman O'Rourke brought to the campaign?
Well, Congressman O'Rourke is an exceedingly talented person who has a spirit and energy, and like so many others, he has an optimistic, inclusive vision of an America that works for everyone. Congressman O'Rourke and all Democrats on the stage believe that we all succeed only when we all succeed. This is a president who has told people repeatedly, your success is dependent on your failure. Zero-sum politics, zero-sum universe. And Congressman O'Rourke is a firm believer in the notion that a rising tide can indeed lift all boats, and it must never only lift the yachts. And that is why I appreciate what he brought to the table. And we have so many other folks in this race, and I'm just so impressed with the deep field that we have. Last question, sir.
Yeah, are you worried about the impeachment sucking energy away from this process here?
Democrats know how to walk and chew gum. I mean, in the course of the first 9-10 months here of Democratic rule in the House of Representatives, we have delivered on our promises. We have passed an increase in the minimum wage. We have passed a number of bills to reduce the cost of prescription drugs and to stabilize the Affordable Care marketplace. We've passed a number of measures to address the need to reduce gun violence in this country. We have passed measures to help dreamers. 90% of the American people want to provide relief to dreamers. We've passed democracy reform, H.R. 1, which is a critical bill. We can't fix any of these things. We're not going to be able to address climate until we fix our democracy. It's going to be very hard to do common sense gun reform if the gun lobby continues to have a stranglehold. And so what we're going to continue to do, we have a constitutional obligation to do the work that's being done right now on the impeachment front. 40, 50 years from now, when we're potentially in a ditch, they're going to look back on this moment and say, what did the Congress do? And I want to make sure, and I know Speaker Pelosi wants to make sure, that we did our job. We followed the facts where the facts led us. This is a nation of laws and not of any one person. Nobody in this country is above the law. And that is why we are doing this. But I am confident. The American people every single day multitask. I'm always amazed when I go around this country and meet people who have a loved one suffering from opioid addiction, and they're dealing with that. They're managing their family's affairs. They're getting their kids off to school. They're multitasking every day, and we've got to be doing the same thing for them, fighting for them, and also fighting for our democracy. This is truly a moral fork in the road, and we can and will do both. I wish we had a leader in the Senate, Mitch McConnell, who would follow through. He can't even take up a bill on election security that is bipartisan. I always thought that keeping our elections secure wasn't a right versus left issue, it was a right versus wrong issue, but evidently, Donald Trump told him not to do it, so he's not gonna do it. Very
Tom, a
sad.
question on
Thanks a lot.
disability rights.
Take care.
Sir.